Hi folks, today's topic is a really cool one because it challenges the norm and the acceptability of celebrations when they're rolling around. Now, we celebrate so many things throughout the course of 12 months, a year, like birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, first days of school, last day of school, homecoming, graduations, starting new jobs, retiring, we know, on and on. And I don't know about you, but I really enjoy celebrating milestones in life like this. But what if we decided we don't have to wait around until these events to celebrate? What if we looked at celebrating any time we possibly can and not feeling guilty when we can't always do these big, huge events? Today, I want to talk about three main things in this podcast episode: why we don't celebrate all the time and why we only celebrate with certain events. Number two, what we feel compelled to do when we celebrate. And number three, how can we actually celebrate more every day? Welcome. Let's get started. Yes, this is the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast. My name is Justin. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. This is the podcast where we take the philosophy of yoga and we use it in a very practical and everyday way, because that's what's going on here. We're living everyday life as human beings. And so we're taking that philosophy and we're using it as every single day steps that we can take, one small step at a time, to become happier people and to become people who are driven by purpose. Now, we're going to be talking about some incredible information today regarding celebrations, how it connects to a little bit of yoga philosophy, what we can do if we don't always feel like celebrating, or how can we celebrate more, all of that great stuff. But before we get on to all of that, please do not forget, you can follow me on Instagram. I would love to have you following me. It's at Justin Ricky Yoga. The link is in the description of either this episode, whether you're watching it on YouTube or your podcast platform. It's in the show notes. You can also sign up for our weekly newsletter. I love the weekly newsletter. It gives you some extra stuff, more stuff than I talk about here on this podcast, on these Tuesday episodes when they come out. So check that out as well. So let's get to the content. Let's get to the main event here. I actually personally think we do not celebrate things enough. We don't. And when we do celebrate, oftentimes we default to these specific celebratory practices that I mentioned before in the introduction here. And I want to talk about reframing how we look at these celebrations in our life. Now, in the next episode of this podcast, which is going to air next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about why life can actually seem boring when you're doing the work to create the life that you actually want. It actually feels boring sometimes. It can also feel boring when you're trying to get your life in order, or you're cleaning up kind of old junk and in your life, in your soul, and moving towards purpose, which is what this podcast is all about, moving towards your purpose and finding that version of happiness that suits you, that thing that lights you up, that thing that feels joyful, and it evolves. So this episode is actually a great precursor to the next one, which we're going to talk about why things can feel boring sometimes, because we're going to talk about celebrating today. And I just don't mean when it's a birthday or that bridal shower or a moving in party. I'm talking about little celebrations all the time that make life feel less boring or less heavy at times. Because yes, life does feel heavy at times, doesn't it? And it's not going to go away. That feeling will not always go away, because as a human being living on the earth, things feel heavy to us. It's just how things go. Now, I want us to talk about three main things that I mentioned in the beginning. Number one, why we don't celebrate all the time and only with certain events. Number two, what we feel compelled to do when we celebrate. And number three, how we can celebrate more every day. Those were the three things that I mentioned at the very beginning of all of this. Now, before I get into these three things, let's tie this into what we know about yoga and celebration. Now, according to yoga philosophy, we honor Santosha, which teaches us about contentment. We talked about this in the last episode. If you have not listened to the last episode or watched the last episode of this podcast, which is about feeling valued at your job, we talked a lot about contentment there, because Santosha is actually very, very powerful. It teaches us that we are content with what we have rather than wanting what others have or what it appears that they have, right? What they seem to have. We also learn that if we have gratitude in our hearts and in our beings, we will be happy with whatever we have. And, I say that, and you might think, gee, that sounds easy, and it seems easy, but we know that it's not easy. We know that that's not how it goes. In our world, that's why I mentioned about it, feeling heavy. In our world, there is so much out there that relates to feeling jealous or feeling like we don't deserve certain things, or that we will never be able to achieve certain things unless we look a certain way or act a certain way, so on and so forth. And let me be really clear with you here. Santosha is not teaching you that you should just go out and kind of settle for what you have, or you shouldn't go after what you're looking for, because that's not it either. It's found within, it's in there. And doing the small things every day not only helps you keep track and on track in your purpose, but it keeps you content with what you have and what's going on around you while you are working towards your purpose, while you're staying on this path that you are on. Not only are you grateful for what you have, but then you use Santosha to tap into what you have that creates good, happy, other positive influences for other people. So you're teaching others what feeling content feels like through your own actions. So why not celebrate everything? Why don't we do that? Well, because as humans, we have an ego. Every human being has an ego. You need an ego to survive. Your ego is set to watch out for danger. Yoga works to challenge the ego. And the challenge is, as I just said, it's all about the danger. Our brains are set up for survival as a human. Now, because of this, our brain is always on high alert, looking for things that could go wrong. It kind of amplifies or magnifies real life situations into bigger, and they're really not bigger situations, but our minds amplify it. The ego amplifies it. And we do that so that we can be sure that we can survive. So we look for things that are going to go wrong. So how can you actually celebrate a cup of coffee that you just made if you're looking for or thinking about all the things that are going to go wrong in the next hour of your day, right? So let's talk about this teeter-totter of a game that we play when it comes to contentment versus ego. So, number one, why don't we celebrate all the time and we only celebrate with certain events? Let's talk about that first point. Well, one theory points to what is called a zero-sum bias. Now, this means we believe a win for us, something that is a victory, a win for us, is someone else's loss. We believe that sometimes. And we don't want to hurt someone else's feelings by taking away something from them. If it's happiness in our corner, it might be someone else's loss. So we don't want to take that from someone, and we may think that there isn't enough happiness to go around. Like if I'm happy, you're not going to be able to be happy. And that's kind of how sometimes things settle in this zero-sum bias theory that's out there. An example of this is when you have something great that happens to you, but you're afraid to share it with someone else because you do not want to take away from someone else's happiness, especially if someone, this is the example, if someone is working hard to turn things around in their life, or they're struggling to find some small wins themselves. So you don't want to kind of make them feel negative in a negative way because you're having these victories. Now, what this does is it pushes, here's the thing, it pushes all of the little things that we could be celebrating under the rug. And then we wait until some big event is promoted as a big celebration so that we can celebrate a big thing like a birthday or a graduation from law school or something like that. But we don't want to celebrate the small things. Look, I am not suggesting that we should not celebrate big life events. That's not what we're suggesting here. What I'm saying, though, is that our ego wants to protect us from feeling upset if we celebrate something small, because research shows that we don't always want to share it because it may take away someone else's happiness. This is untrue. This is completely untrue. Another reason why we don't celebrate all the time is because we think that we shouldn't celebrate until we reach some kind of milestone. So let's wait to have a really big birthday celebration until someone reaches their 18th birthday, 21st birthday, 30th birthday, 40th birthday, 50th birthday, 50th anniversary, whatever that may be. Or maybe you celebrate the graduation of the 4-year college or 4-year high school program. Or you celebrate, like I mentioned before, these milestone birthdays that have round numbers like 40 and 50 all attached to them because it's this big milestone. Or maybe you figure out that it's time to celebrate someone who's been looking for a job and they finally land it, so you celebrate. But the question is, why are you waiting? Why are you waiting to celebrate when there's a milestone? And I'm not suggesting you should not celebrate the milestone. I'm saying, why are we waiting until we celebrate the milestone? Well, studies tell us that we do this because we think that when we get there, our work is done. The work is over. We've reached this. That's it. We've gotten it. Case closed. Time for this big celebration. So now it's time to party. But in reality, no matter what milestone you think you're celebrating, the work has just begun. And another reason why we don't celebrate all the time is because it can feel boring to celebrate all the time, or you might think you're doing the same things over and over again, or you look for a negative. We tend to think of these big events for celebrating as positive, so it's easy to celebrate, but the day-to-day things we do in life can seem very boring, and they can also seem negative. Like waking up in the morning with the alarm clock. Is that a positive experience? Now, maybe for some of you, you love getting up with the alarm clock. But for the majority of people, and research tells us that almost 70% of adults, 70%, so that's not a minority, 70% of adults do not wake up when the first alarm goes off. They either lay there or they hit the snooze button. And so that's telling me that most people don't find that as a positive experience. I know I don't. But waking up in the morning is not exciting for most people. So why would we want to celebrate that? We should actually be celebrating that. Why are you not having a morning cup of coffee just to celebrate getting up? Or having a morning cup of coffee with other people after you've done something productive, like maybe working out or taking a short walk or something like that, before you go to work. Because we look at all of those things that we have to do negatively, and it's a negative act. We only want to see things when it's time to buy, in a positive way, when it's time to buy that holiday card for someone, or getting out your Christmas cards and getting your list out because this is positive, right? Or that birthday card, or the wedding, or the graduation from kindergarten, or the graduation from high school, as I mentioned before. Generally, we look at all of that stuff really positively, but we don't look at those day-to-day things in a positive light. And we should, because when you wake up with the alarm, you are actually victorious. You have beaten that voice in your head that says, press the snooze button, or just lay here, or get your phone out and start looking at social media. You see how your ego can trick you. So the bottom line to this first section is the day-to-day things we do could seem boring, negative, and tedious, and so we don't always want to celebrate them, so we just wait around until these big events happen, and then we have this big celebration. So let's move on to number 2. What do we feel compelled to do when we celebrate things? And I want to add in this too. What we feel compelled to do might not be what you want to do, actually, or what is best for you. So I was actually talking to a really good friend of mine recently about celebrations, and I could see the sadness in this person's eyes because she was really looking forward to celebrating an event in someone else's life. And I could just tell she was sad because at the current time in her life, she's facing what we all face at certain areas of our life and times of our life: obstacles, things that get in the way. And just because someone's event is coming up in their life, like a birthday or some other event that's coming up, that does not mean that you are going to be in the best position of your life to be a part of that big celebration. For example, do you know how many times I've had to turn down parties, get-togethers, dinners, whatever they are, because I either didn't have a scheduling capability, I didn't have a spare dollar to even do anything out there in the world with. I didn't have any money to do it. Or I was in a period of my life that I wasn't able in a healthy way to be part of a get-together or a trip or this big event. And what do? Well, normally we ignore all of this and we think, well, if I don't go to the Thanksgiving at my parents' house or this birthday party or this work party or this wedding reception or this graduation party or whatever, then so-and-so's never going to talk to me again, or so-and-so's not going to be my friend, or there's going to be this big blow up. But here's a hard truth for every single one of us that we have to understand. We need to understand that each and every one of us has special occasions that we like to celebrate. And if your friends or family or whomever they are in your life is there for you when you break up with people, when you need a helping hand in moving, when you experience a death, when there's a trauma, or whatever it is, and they're struggling right at the moment that you're getting ready to have your, let's say, 37th wedding anniversary, or maybe it's your celebration of retirement, or whatever it is, and your friends or whoever it is are going through something in their life that is debilitating for them, that they're having trouble seeing, that they're having trouble facing, and they need time and they need space to work through things. Well, getting mad at them for not being able to come all the time to these big events, and I mean all the time, then it becomes no longer about your friendship and it becomes about you and your ego. Good friends understand that they cannot be together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, if you have a friend who's blowing you off all the time, or it's a pattern, we know that that's a problem because we know that we want to look for patterns and not isolated incidents. If someone keeps blowing you off over and over and over and over and over, and not just big things, small things, that's a pattern. That's completely different than a person who can't make one particular event when there's 9 of the events that you celebrate every year because there's something else going on. No one owes you every birthday, every anniversary, every shower, whatever. Let people do their thing and come back to how they show up for you in a day-to-day capacity, which is harder to do, my friends. Showing up for people on a day-to-day basis is harder to do than it is to just showing up to your one birthday party you might have in your 365 days in a year. It's harder to show up for people all the time. And it's harder to show up for yourself all the time. Every day, all day, without fail. Because that's just hard, and it's impossible to feel as though you can get to everyone and everybody all the time and to every single event. So here are some things you also do not have to do when you participate in celebrations, since many times people feel you should always do them at celebrations, just because they have no other way of knowing how to celebrate, maybe, or because the culture is ingrained that we have to do these things. So not only do we need to understand that we don't always have to be feeling like we have to be at every single, we can't miss it because it's going to be just the end of the world if we miss it, even though we're in ruin, right? And we're not taking care of ourselves. There are things that you can do even if you go to these events that you don't necessarily have to do. you can back away from doing some of these things to help you as you go through these celebrations. Number one, drinking alcohol is one of them. You don't have to drink alcohol to celebrate. So if you don't want to drink alcohol, don't drink alcohol. Number two, same goes for other drugs or stimulants or whatever it is that might be present to enhance your experience. You don't have to do any of that just because. You also don't have to go to places that trigger you. So let's say if you and your parents don't have a relationship or you don't have a good relationship, but your siblings are going to have a party at your parents' house. Well, if you don't want to force yourself to go just because you owe your siblings something, which you don't really owe anybody anything, so you don't need to be forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do like that are going to make you feel like garbage, then you don't need to go to somewhere that triggers you. Same goes with eating. Eating foods you don't like or going to a restaurant that you can't eat at doesn't have, or the restaurant doesn't have things that you can eat. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person or you suck because you're not going to go to that person or that place rather. What about being somewhere where other people might trigger you and those people don't align with who you really are? So if you have friends that hang out with other people that might be a negative influence, you might not want to be around all of that. And finally, trying to one-up every single celebration for show. Like, who are you trying to impress, right? The more you try and impress people, the less content you are, and the more turmoil future days to come are going to have because you're worried about all this show and not about what's going on inside day to day. So the bottom line to all of this, the second section is, if you feel like you do not want or cannot participate in every single stinking event that someone is holding, you don't have to. Celebrating things can be done daily. And your friends and your family and the people who love you should understand that. Now, let's go there now to celebrating the things daily. So, how can you celebrate more every day? When these big events are not able to be attended all the time, because yes, your life isn't going to get suddenly easier on the day of someone else's big event or another event that they're celebrating or whatever it is. There will be an ebb and flow of your life, which also must be honored. That's contentment. That's practicing Santosha again. Here are some things that you can do every day for a celebration. Number one, if you're someone who likes to practice gratitude in the morning, then do it and celebrate it. I don't like getting up in the morning. I mentioned this earlier when I talk about the alarm clock. I hate the alarm clock. I hate getting up with that alarm. I also don't like getting out of bed because I feel like it's uncomfortable. You feel groggy. You're in this fog. I hate all of that. So when I get my ass up and after I've had my coffee, I actually celebrate that I got up by journaling why I am celebrating today. And I'm not just celebrating the fact that I got up. I'm celebrating other things. Why else? Why else would you be grateful or celebrating something or being grateful for anything that you've done? Go deeper. An example is, from my journal, is that I was happy, for example, the journal I did today, I was happy that I was able to bring a clothes basket up the stairs from the basement that I had just dried. All the clothes that come out of the dryer. I mean, I struggle with that. I struggle with folding clothes. So why not celebrate, for me, the fact that I actually brought the clothes basket up the stairs the day before? That's a small win. And what that also does is it keeps me present to what's going on now so I can celebrate what's right in front of me. Number two, just like the clothes basket, acknowledge when you have done something small. When we do these big things, all of a sudden we want to have this party, right? Whenever there's a big thing, we always want to have a party. And then everyone might use this as an excuse to drink alcohol or to eat foods they normally wouldn't eat or be around people they don't want to be around or take time off of work and they can't afford it. But what about the closet that you cleaned out? What about washing the car? What about exercise? Why can't you and your friends simply celebrate taking an exercise by getting together after exercise class, by getting together afterwards and having coffee or having lunch? Why can't you do that? Do you know the more that you do that, the more that you are going to feel more joy in your life? By doing those little things instead of waiting around for these big celebrations. And by doing things that are celebratory instead of looking at everything so negatively, because we often look at exercising as something that's negative. I can't do that. I don't have time for that. My kids this, my parents that, my this. Those are all the excuses we get for not being able to exercise or not exercising. What about if your friend has gotten through another week at their job that they can't stand, and you know that they're looking for a new one, so they've gotten through another week, so you have a light dinner together on your patio saying, you know what, I'm here for you, we're here in this together, and you're gonna find another job, but in the meantime, let's have a dinner. Right now, a nice light dinner, maybe a nice salad or whatever it is, so you can enjoy each other's company, just celebrating another week gone by that your friend didn't walk out of the job that she can't stand anymore. Why do you need to wait to celebrate the bigger things? Another tip is to fill your space with things that feel good to you. You see, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see I have a salt lamp over here. I like salt lamps. I like the way that they look. I like the way that it makes the room feel. So I like to bring those things into the spaces that I'm in. You can do this for other people too, and it doesn't have to be just on their birthday. Right? You don't have to wait till someone's birthday to give them something or to go out to dinner or give them fresh flowers or give yourself fresh flowers. Why are you waiting? Why are you waiting for that? Why aren't you doing that now? What about when you see something in the store that you know someone else will like? Why don't you just grab it for them? It doesn't have to be because it's their, or you don't have to wait to give it to them till their birthday either. Can't you give it to them now? Can't you put some candles in your house to celebrate that your house is cleaner than it was yesterday, or that you've just finished that phase of that project that you worked on in your house, so now you want to celebrate by putting a candle in there? Another way you can really celebrate more often is treating yourself. This is a big secret to staying motivated, because guess what? Motivation is going to be something that you are not going to have every second of every single day. You're just not. Because how many times a day do you think to yourself, well, I just don't want to do that, or I don't feel like doing that? And I'm not talking about things that are not good for you. I'm talking about the things that are good for you, like exercising. How many times have you talked yourself out of an exercise class? I tell the classes that I teach in person often that the biggest obstacle is to get there. And if you use a online scheduling platform for if you are a yoga teacher or you are a exercise professional and you have schedules and you work through systems that clients have to book classes, the hardest part for people is not necessarily actually being in the class. The hardest part is for people when they play the game of not hitting the cancel button or not. You see, how many times have you canceled on yourself on an exercise class? I have done it, but I will not allow myself to hit that cancel button unless it's got to be dire. There has to be something that has gone on that is dire. And the reason I am able to do that is because I know there's a reward waiting for me afterwards. Not just the feeling, like not just how good I feel afterwards, but I always give myself a reward after a really hot yoga class, like chocolate. I love to have a nice piece of dark chocolate after a really tough yoga class. You know what else I love after a really hot yoga class? A nice ice cold Diet Coke from McDonald's. That fountain pop, there's just something, and I don't have it all the time. I actually don't have it very often, but there's just, if it's been a really particularly tough class and I feel I'm getting that Diet Coke. And so why can't you do something that feels good after you've done something tough like that? What if you dance a little bit after you finally finish that little spot in your garden? Can't you just stand up and dance for a little bit? What's wrong with that? Why not? Why do you have to wait till you go to a wedding to dance? Why? And then the last thing you can do that really helps you to celebrate all the time, sounds weird, but it's true, and that's rest. Resting. This is a big one. You give yourself a chance without thinking that it's bad to just rest. So give yourself a chance. Give yourself permission to rest. There is a lot to be said about recharging your battery with rest. And I don't mean just going to sleep at night. I'm talking about taking time away. And that doesn't mean vacations either. It means maybe you're in your house a little bit longer today than you were the day before. Maybe you're not going to be able to go to all these places or do these things that you want to do because you're so mentally exhausted. And if you go to do them, it's going to be worse for you than it would be if you didn't. And you can experience them when you feel like your battery has been charged. If you are able to regularly take some time to rest, I highly recommend that, because if you do not give yourself rest, things are going to spiral real quick. And celebrating all the work you do by just unwinding or relaxing or enjoying your favorite TV show or your favorite book is so healthy for you. And so I want to conclude by reminding you that big events are super fun, they're super enjoyable, and we should keep celebrating them. But it's not where you want to put all of your celebration energy. You don't want it all to go there. Just because it's someone's birthday doesn't mean the rest of the year doesn't matter. And the more we celebrate every day, the more joy, the more happiness, the more contentment we're going to find. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to want to celebrate every single day physically, because you are going to feel days that you have high anxiety, that you're feeling like you're not yourself, that you're feeling out of it. And that's okay. But that's why we have rest, because that's the celebration of when you feel like that's your body saying to you, whoa, take a pause. And it's important to celebrate that by resting. Contentment means that you see what you have and you celebrate it. You honor it. Those things that you do every day, which are so important, that get overlooked because you're planning this big birthday bash. I mean, it's fun to plan big birthday events, but what about all the things that are happening to you right now? That big birthday bash has not happened that you're planning. It literally has not happened. It has not. The only thing that's happening right now is what's happening right now in front of you. That's all that's happening. That big birthday event has not, it just hasn't happened. But there's merit to getting excited about things coming up in the future, but you don't want to forget about what's going on in the present. You don't want to lose kind of the rush of excitement that you're going to get for these big things, but you also want to be excited in the moment. And it's not easy to do that all the time, and it takes practice, just like anything else does in life. Practice. So start celebrating as much as you can right now, because big events haven't happened yet. But what is happening is you've reached the end of this episode. And so now that's cause for you to celebrate. So go do it by telling yourself things like, I deserve this happiness. I deserve to celebrate. I deserve to feel joy in my life. I deserve to pour into the cups of other people because my cup is full. Go enjoy all that, because that's just it. You deserve it. Every single part of it. And until next week, when I see you, celebrate the little things, because, again, you deserve it. I'll see you then.